Welcome to Contractor Cuts, where we cover the good, the bad, and the ugly of growing a successful contracting company.
Welcome to Contractor Cuts. My name is Clark Turner. Thank you so much for joining us again this week. So today we are doing another coaching cuts. This is a short form version of the podcast where I take a topic that we discuss often in coaching and kind of break it down in a singular spot. So this is a great spot for us to pause in the series that we're doing. Right now we're walking through our ProStruct 360 operating system. And so the first week we covered our vision and our structure and our job roles and what you need to do about that. And how to build those in step 1 and step 2. And then last week we covered our part 1 of the core documents, the core processes documentation that you need to do. So we walked through 4 core processes that you need to document, that you need to have built out to grow your company. And so today's coaching cuts, I am going to be breaking down the 10-step process. That's our number one most important process. Now, doing the 10-step process is the project management process, kind of start to finish, the client's experience of our company and how they're going to receive it. That's what the 10-step project management process is. So this process is where we start with every coaching client, whether you're in your foundations, growth, executive, anywhere. We need to understand, everyone's got this process, right? The 10-step process you have currently locked in one way or another that you're doing internally in your company, right? And so I'm going to walk through, and what I do first, probably second or third week of coaching, as soon as you come in with us, is I want to understand your current 10-step, and then I want to lay out the perfect 10-step according to ProStruct and how we think and the proven method that works doing a 10-step process. And then we take your process and our process and merge them together. Our goal is not a cookie cutter way to run a contracting company. We have a structure in place, the skeletal structure. And so what we do together in coaching is pack the meat on the bone around that. And we custom build these processes around your company. That's why our coaching is one-on-one. We want to be able to work with you and get your company running in the right direction with your own 10-step process of how your project management goes on site. Now, these project management processes are good for a trades company, a residential construction, new construction, new build, residential remodeling, commercial, any level in the construction world has these 10 steps. But we tinker with them and change them depending on your target market, the product that you're giving, right? If I'm doing turns between tenants and flipping apartment buildings, that is a different 10-step process than my general renovations on a homeowner level, or my high-end additions have a little bit different of a process, or my new construction has a different process. So as we're building these out and as I'm talking through them, I'm going to give kind of the generalization of them, but every company does it differently. And so customizing it to your company is where we come in on the coaching consulting side, to where we help you understand exactly what you should be doing, when you should be doing it, and we really customize this process. Why is it important to write it down, have it written, have it laid out exactly how it's supposed to run? Is duplication and growth. We can't hire a project manager, an office manager, a head of construction, estimator. We can't hire those job roles unless we have a documented way to show them this is how every role in the company operates within the project management process. Here's your part. So in step 2, you're going to be passing it to this person. And in step 3, this person to this other job role, right? And so we have our vision of where we're going. We have our job roles, step 2. On the core process documentation, step 3 of the operating system, we're laying out what those job roles are doing within this process. So a lot of time when we're refining this 10-step process, we're going back to your job roles and redefining those, because it's like, well, wait, why am I doing that? Shouldn't that be his job? Or why is the office manager handling that? Because that really feels more like the project manager's job. And so defining the job roles happens continuously as we're building out a lot of our processes. So we start with the 10-step process also because This is from intake to final invoice. This is the choreographed dance that we have with our clients of how they're receiving our product, which is what they're getting, right? And we always talk about there's two products. We've got our product of the new kitchen, the addition, the finalized space that a dentist office is moving into. That's product number one that everyone thinks they're buying. Product number two that we're really building right now is the client's experience of receiving product number one, right? So your job in building your company is building out both those products with a focus on that client experience. So my job site in Atlanta runs the same as my job site in Lexington, which runs the same as my job site in Austin. And every client who experiences my company is going to have the exact same 10 out of 10 perfect experience with my company because everyone is held to the same standards, which is within this 10-step process, right? So today we're going to break that down. The next few weeks, we're going to break down some more of the processes and then continue on with walking through the operating system. All right, so let's get started on the 10-step. So step number one in the 10-step process is your client intake. The client intake is the way that we receive clients coming into the company, document it, get all of their information to get prepped for the job. Client intake includes adding them into the software, getting a full scope of the project, some photos ideally. If it's a new construction or addition, I want some blueprints if they have them. I need to understand where my starting point is with that client during the client intake. So during the client intake, I'm going to document down how do people get to me? How do they reach me? How do they, when they come to my website, how am I capturing their information? Who's calling them back? If they're calling my office number, who's answering it? What's the intake form? How are we documenting and prepping? And all of the capturing of the front end information and to understand exactly where on the process they are, as well as part of that process of the client intake is letting them know the next couple steps, right? We always want to be one step ahead of the client saying, okay, next, this is what's going to happen. Just so you know, we will be calling you tomorrow. I'll have my head of construction call you this afternoon. What are the next steps after we get all of this information? So the client intake is step one. How are you receiving the clients in? All right, step two, we call our desk estimate. Everyone does this differently, but our desk estimate we've dove into in previous podcasts. Search our podcast for desk estimate. You'll find a handful of them that hit that keyword. Our desk estimate process is how our head of construction, if you're a one-man show, you're doing the intake and the desk estimate and the project management but when you're wearing your head of construction hat, how are you getting that the information from the intake? We're going to build out an estimate and build out a desk estimate, a very broad estimate that I'm using my job templates and my template job items to where in 20 to 30 minutes, I can have a robust estimate with everything on the scope on it. Now, I'm not writing the details. I'm not putting square footage. I'm not defining what type of hardwoods we're putting in. I'm simply building out a skeleton of an estimate that I can then later build out and really make robust. So the desk estimate is a 30,000 foot view of the job and what needs to be done. I'm doing this from my desk. Again, that's why it's a desk estimate. I'm looking at the photos they sent. I'm going to Zillow and looking at property information. I can tell a lot from some Google searches of that address where, hey, this house is a $300,000 house. We're probably not doing a $150,000 kitchen. Oh, this house is a $2.5 million house. They're not going to do a $20,000 kitchen, right? So we're trying to understand scope and what they're looking for, level of finish. And so I'm building out, ideally I have a job template. Let's say we're doing a kitchen renovation. I've got a kitchen renovation job template. So when I'm starting this project, I'm saying, okay, I'm going to use that template. And it's got all the line items that I would need from demo to due diligence to pre-construction to the porta potties I need on site. Everything that might be on a kitchen estimate I have in this template. Then I'm editing the template. We don't need that. We don't need that. Oh, I like that. Let's add more onto that one. And so it's a very quick and easy way to get a roundabout number to where I can then present it to the client and say, hey, listen, I'm putting together a scope before I come on site on Friday. Do you have 5 minutes to hop on a call and help me understand some of your project? They say, sure, absolutely. So we hop on a Zoom, and I get on the Zoom and say, listen, I put together an estimate. Here's what the desk estimate looks like. We're about $75,000 for this kitchen. Let me walk you through where I came up with, but let me ask some questions while we're going through it, right? And so I'm presenting numbers of a broad scope on a Zoom, ideally before I go on site. Now, if you're on our retreat, we dove deep into, I think we spent 2 hours, 3 hours on the estimating process with desk estimate for site estimate. A desk estimate is always done on every job. Presenting the desk estimate to the client is sometimes done. We want to do that. That's a great first date with the client. That's our way to really set ourselves apart from the other contractors. Also, we get rid of the tire kickers. The person that has $5,000 for the new kitchen, and I say, listen, I'm at 75. I don't think we're apples to apples on what you're wanting versus what I can do it for. And so we eliminate having to do a site estimate going out there during the desk estimate process. But that's not the reason we're doing that. That's just a really great side effect of it. The reason we're doing the desk estimate is I'm getting that first date, I'm getting the full scope written. So then when I go to step 3 of my 10-step, which is the site estimate, I show up on the site estimate and I've got a pre-written scope that I've discussed hopefully with the client that they know we're within the ballpark of their price point. And so in a larger company as I scale, my project manager showing up on site to revise this estimate, and he already has a full scope that I wrote for him of what the client's looking for, along with photos in the software and everything else. So before my project manager shows up, he knows what we're doing, pricing that I've talked through with the client. He has got all that information and look through the photos. Or if I'm the project manager, I'm doing kind of a one-man show. I'm showing up on site. I've already talked to Mr. Johnson. We had a really good rapport on the phone. He really likes our estimate. He was hoping to be around 60, but my desk estimate's at 75, but that's a random number that we can massage up or down depending on his finishes and what he wants to do, right? So we're on site. I know his budget. He's looked at my numbers. He's really impressed with my level of detail from the first intake all the way to a few days later when I'm doing a site estimate. And so I'm showing up on that site estimate with a fully prepared. And so this is one of the things that is super important to understand of why the desk estimate is so helpful going into the site estimate is I'm on date number 2 with Mr. Johnson. When my competition shows up, they're showing up as a note taker. They're taking notes. This is what I'm doing. Okay, yep. What else do you? So you want to knock that wall out? Okay, new cabinets or no? Okay, we're going to do. So they're literally getting all the information that I did already in the past. So their first contact with Mr. Johnson is on Friday during our estimate, and they're just a note taker gathering information, taking photos, trying to understand the space. I then come in after them on the same day and say, hey, Mr. Johnson, good to see you again. So, this house is beautiful. That's what I was expecting, but that kitchen is actually larger than I thought. That's a great walkway you've got into the dining room. Why don't we do this? And so me and Mr. Johnson are on dreaming phase on that site estimate. We are looking at the details, talking about fit and finish, and talking about what he actually, like the end goal of the project is. Is he reselling this house? Is he, is getting an ADA compliant because his parents are moving? Whatever the goals are for it, I am in dream stage with him on that first estimate. So that night he goes home after the site estimate, and he's laying in, his wife gets home, and they're having dinner, and she's like, how'd the estimates go? First guy was good. I really liked Clark. Like, he gets what we're looking for. So I'm on my second date when everyone else is on their first, right? And so I write that estimate up. And for me, after the site estimate, I go into step 4, which is the estimate revisions. Now, the site estimate, we have really defined ways to do that before I go into the step 4. Step 3 with the site estimate, the way that we do that is super defined for our project manager. So in our documented 10-step processes, how we do a site estimate is down to how I want your photos taken, how I want your measurements taken, how I want the communication before, during, and after, how I want you to enter the house, everything that I expect. I set the bar for my project managers. Day 1 that they're working for me, they're going through our 10-step process. I have it on a slideshow. We're walking them through what I expect out of each of these phases. So if you're coming to coaching, we give you that slideshow and then we edit it together and make it exactly around your company. But the goal is when you bring that project manager in, even though he has a way that he does it, I'm sure he's worked for another company and he's been doing this for a while. I want him to forget everything he knows, and I want him to learn and understand the bar I'm setting for how a site estimate goes, right? So that step is not just, okay, you go to the site estimate, gather information, refine the scope. that's what you're doing, but what are the expectations of every step of that site estimate? And how should, when they leave there, how are we following up? How are we telling the client the next steps? How are we adjusting the scope from the desk estimate to the site estimate, where the desk estimate says $75,000 and he's out here saying, I want to knock that wall down and I want to raise the ceilings up because we got attic above this. I'm then on the site estimate telling him, hey, that's a change order and that's a change order. This scope went from 75 to 150 pretty quickly. Like, is that okay with you? Right? So how we work the site estimate and what's expected, how do you communicate, is a very defined part of the process that we have to have written out, trainable, and teachable. And the hardest part, we got to follow it ourselves before we bring someone in to do it as well, right? I need my jobs to run exactly at my top expectation when I'm running them. So when I bring on project managers, they're going to be able to run them the same way and hit the bar that I'm setting. All right, so that's the site estimate. That's number 3. Number 4 is our estimate revisions. This is taking those site estimates and going back to the office and revising them. We have a certain process of doing that, how it needs to get done, what you should be doing during the revisions, how we communicate this. Now, there is this process, depending on size and scope of the project, is very short or very long, right? So we might have 2 or 3 site visits. I might, if it's a new construction home, if I'm building you a $2 million home, this isn't we just went on site, we walked it, we got this. The site estimate on a new construction is actually sitting down with the drawings, or maybe they don't have drawings, we need to get the drawings, right? So this process is different for that product. But either way, the site estimate is getting the verified first estimate passed at the numbers that are defined but not refined, right? So the desk estimate is broad. The site estimate or the secondary estimate is these are pretty accurate, around 10% close to final numbers. And then we're going to do revisions, and these revisions are going to be refining the numbers and really getting it within 5 to 3% of our final number. Site revisions, I'm not picking out finishes. Site revisions, I'm not getting final square footage measurements down to I'm getting square footage measurements, but I'm not refining it down to like the level of what type of hardwoods I'm putting in, and really the finishes and the selections. All that happens during pre-construction. I'm putting budgeted numbers in there. So I understand that they want subway tile in the backsplash, so I know how much that's going to be. And I understand that they want a really high-end tile that's from Italy that's going to be in the shower. So I understand we need to budget $15 a square foot for the tile, or $30 a square foot for that really nice tile, right? So I'm refining those numbers on the revisions and trying to come up. Now, I'm not going through and picking out the final stuff. That happens during pre-construction, which I'll talk about in a second. So that estimate revisions, we're changing them, we're revising them, we're getting as close to the final number as possible. I did take measurements on the job site during the estimate, so I'm putting some square footages in there. I know how many cabinet boxes we're going to estimate to have in this. So, we charge per box, and now that's going to change once we're in the pre-construction phase, and we'll talk about in a second, like I said. But I'm getting rough, but as accurate as possible numbers for everything as I can. Once we do that, I'm setting up another Zoom or going to the client's house or meeting with them at my office, and we're going to be doing our setting client expectations. I'm trying to get them into our client engagement agreement meeting, the CEA meeting. You've heard us talk about it a lot on the podcast if you listen to multiple podcasts with us. The CEA meeting, client engagement agreement meeting, is our step 5. It's setting the client's expectations of how things are going to go. Now, I'm trying to do a CEA meeting as early as possible. Now, again, going back to the dating, trying to ask them to marry you. You don't ask them to marry you on the first date. We don't go meet the parents on the second date, right? For us, the client engagement agreement is the next step in being serious about moving forward with this relationship. It's the meeting the parents. It's not getting married, but it's the meeting the parents phase. So that being said, I want to do that as early as possible, that where it makes sense, but also don't want to shoot my shot during the desk estimate, trying to get them to meet my parents on the first date, if that makes sense. So that being said, on the setting client expectations, I'm not going to go into what the CEA, all the details of CEA, but broadly, A CEA is a 7-page document that lays out every expectation the client should have of us and every expectation I have of the client. It's how we get paid. It's how we invoice. It's all of the warranty information. We discuss their lenders, and if they have a lender, this is how things operate with a lender that's differently. This is where we talk through you're going to get 2 emails a week from me. You're going to get a Gantt chart, like all of the stuff I'm promising them, and also the expectations that you're not going to have another contractor in the house when I'm there. Are you or are you not? Okay, let's talk about that. The expectation of how lockboxes work. Everything that's going to hit them with the change order, I want to let them know ahead of time so there's no surprises of what I expect out of them once the job starts. So that's what the client engagement agreement is. Again, you do this well and you have a really good client engagement agreement, which we give you if you come into coaching. But the CEA is where the client falls in love with you and feels comfortable and built enough trust that they want to sign and move forward with you. So once we set their expectations, we had 1, 2, 3 revisions depending on the size and scope. We then are getting a signature and going into pre-construction. The difference of construction and pre-construction, obviously it's before construction, but what we're doing is we have 2 different phases of the project, pre-construction and construction. This is where we lean a little heavier towards a commercial style build on a residential property, right? I want to have a full session of my time built and set aside and paid for where I'm doing selections, where I'm laying out what we're doing and how we're doing it. I'm walking the scope with every single one of my trades and my crews so we can refine the numbers, right? So previously, during the revisions to get a signature, we've budgeted $32,000 for cabinets because they want this special custom cabinets, and this is how many boxes. I then take that layout of what we're doing and I take it to my cabinet maker and we sit down and look at it, and maybe $32,000 gets refined to $33,864 because of all the selections. That's what I'm doing during pre-construction. We're finalizing the scope where it converts from an estimate to a quote. When we leave pre-construction, we have locked in numbers that requires a secondary signature on the estimate to finalize our numbers and move forward with the selections that we have, with the redefining of the scope. And we pitch this to the clients in a very easy way. I say, listen, I'm a general contractor, jack of all trades, master of none. So I am not going to be able to get the high level of detail about your electrical needed on the project. I've done a ton of houses before, and I know that to redo the electrical on this gut of this house, it's going to be $15,000. Is usually about, for this square footage and what we need, is where it's going to land. Now, during pre-construction, I've got a signature on the quote. During the pre-construction, that I meet with my electrician. He's like, this panel's full. We're going to have to put a sub panel here. We got to change this. We got to add this onto it. Though you did count for this, which we don't need. All in all, by the time we finish refining it, the electrical's at $18,000 or maybe $13,000. It's refining down with my electrician to get our final number. And so that's going into the pre-construction finalized bid to quote that we need a signature on. We're laying out exactly what the numbers are, avoiding the change orders. Most contractors do that as the job's going on. So I have a budgeted number of $15,000 for electrical. We're 3 months into the project. All of a sudden, that number jumps to $25,000. I got a change order for the homeowner, and that's $10,000 that they would have made different decisions during the estimating process that is now gone and out of their pocket, and that's already made those decisions. Where if I knew it was $25,000 instead of $15,000 ahead of time, I wouldn't have made some of these decisions. I wouldn't have gone with such a nice countertop. I would have downgraded the cabinets a little bit so I had the money to stay within my budget, right? So we're trying to avoid those change orders by refining the scope during pre-construction and converting it into a quote from an estimate. All right. Pre-construction, we do that. We get that. We have every selection picked out. We have a Gantt chart build out, start date, completion date, everything laid out. I'm getting my work orders to my crews. Everyone understands I am organizing the job before we get going. This is all stuff that most contractors are doing from the hip throughout the project, and this is where all the fires happen. This is where all the questions come up, right? So now we're going to go into the construction start date. The construction start, which is step 7, right? Step 6 was pre-construction. Step 7 is their construction start. We have construction start separate than under construction because it's such an important and big phase within starting a project. This is where I'm onboarding my subs. I'm bringing them and doing a site job site calibration. We've got our pre-job checklist. That's a 50-item checklist that I'm walking through. I'm understanding where we're parking. Where's the dumpster? Are we going to walk through their grass, and do we need to talk about that? Where is it okay to leave trash? Where is it not okay? What rooms can we walk into? Hey, where can we store all the materials? Are we going to rent a pod to sit on site? Or can we use your garage? If we're using your garage, how do we access? Can we walk down that hallway where the kid's bedroom is, or do you want us to come in and out of the front door? All of the details are on this checklist that you got to have to really set the tone of starting the job. These are 50 questions that you're going to be asked or have to figure out throughout the job, where the fires pop up, where the crews are constantly calling you, hey, where should we put? We got all the flooring. Where should we drop the flooring? Where do you want us to do this? All of those questions we need to answer during the construction start phase, right? And so we've got all the paperwork for you, and we want you to train your subs on how we're going to start jobs, so we can train our project managers on exactly how we're setting up the job site. There's some other things we're doing during the construction start phase. We're getting a deposit. Well, hopefully we already got a deposit for pre-construction, right? I want to get paid for my due diligence phase. And now on the construction start is our second invoice, which is I'm about to order all your materials. I'm about to start spending money on demo or whatever's happening week 1. So I'm sending my second invoice. My first invoice being my pre-construction. I need to get paid for all of that work I'm doing during pre-construction. All right. Step 7 was construction start. Step 8 is under construction. This is a phase that, if you did all of the other phases right, should be smooth and easy and just knocking the dominoes down that you've already lined up. There is a certain way I want my project managers to run the construction. How in a week out, we visit job sites on Monday. Every single Monday, we do a completion walk with the client and or the crew. How the calendar lays out is part of our core process number 2, which we'll cover next week on calendar management. But what we want to do during this phase is exactly what I want my project manager doing week in and week out while we're under construction. How we invoice, how we pay, how we solve problems, how we do change orders. Everything that we're doing while we're under construction is laid out in our core process, documented on this is what is success versus failure while we're under construction on your job site. Number 9 is closing out the job. That is its own phase on getting out of the property. We don't want 17 go-backs. We don't want to say, hey, I think we're done, and 3 weeks later, hey, I think we're done, and 2 weeks later, hey, I think we're done. I want an exit strategy for the job. This is how we do it. We have our final walk checklist. We do a 95% completion walk where we're walking with the client, building out our punch list. There's ways that we pay and we exit, how we do all that. All of the choreographed exiting of a job site, closing out a job, has to be done in this phase in the same way on every single job. I want to exit smoothly and a really good strategy around it. All right, and then step number 10 is follow-up. Now, this is kind of we fit it all into step 10, but we want to follow up after the job. We want to ask for 5-star reviews on Google. We want to ask for Facebook reviews. We want to ask for referrals. We want to ask for, a lot of times we'll send a professional photographer out to their property to take photos so they can have final photos, but also I want to build my photo gallery of all of my projects to show my clients. How are we closing out that job smoothly to where we have a really good referral? I feel like 50% of the bad experiences that clients get happens during this phase. We never get out. Client was really happy with us, and then the end of the job came, and the last 5% just dragged. So what are we doing to eliminate that? How are we building up that exit? I need a documented way of how we do our final walk checklist, how we exit, how we pay the guys, how we release them from the project, how we hold them accountable to the stuff they've got to do, and how do we leave and let's close out the job. But step 10, following up, how are we following up with the client through that and exiting that phase? And then we also have some documentation in this on how I follow up post-estimate, post-revision, post-signature, every part of the other 9 steps. When are we following up and what's the expectation? If you send an estimate, how soon do you need to respond to it? All right, we need a 24-hour turnaround on that estimate response. I need another one 24 hours after that if we don't hear from the client. If we do hear from them, there's all of the steps and expectations I have of my project manager of following up post-job as well as throughout the process when we need stuff done. All right, that was our 10-step process. We are covering the 10 steps, and we are giving them to you if you are in our Foundations program. I think it's going to be this Friday that we're running through that. We just started a round of Foundations program coaching last week. If you are interested in Foundations, it starts at $500 a month. It is getting all of our paperwork, walking through this, and then we do some check-ins and some other stuff. It's our cheapest level of coaching that gives you everything that you need to get out of the field and into project managing and growing your company. But it's one step below our full-on coaching programs. We are about to go through the 10-step this week. If you're going to be in that with me on Friday, I hope you've listened to this podcast ahead of time to prep for it. But we're going to do a deep dive into doing the 10-step process on that. We also go through the client engagement agreement for an hour and a half. We go through onboarding vendors. There's a lot of paperwork that you're going to get and processes on how to implement them. And so that's the Foundations program. We also have the coaching, the growth, and the executive programs, which is one-on-one, where me and James, depending on what level you're at and what you need and availability, James or I and both of us actually walk you through both of those coaching levels. So if you're interested in coaching at all, you want to know more about this stuff, reach out to us. Go to contractorcuts.com or go to prostruck360.com and contact us. Set up a free 30-minute call with me. I'd love to hear about your company and tell you about what we're doing. See if we can get you into at least a Foundations program, get you some paperwork. Or if you're not ready for that, let's make a game plan for January next year to get you into coaching. Coaching is not a crutch. It's a way to get a second set of eyes, like a business partner, helping you view and grow your company where they don't have any ownership, but they have the same buy-in as helping you. It's also not us being gurus telling you what to do. Our coaching product and what we do on the coaching and consulting side is we've made every mistake in the book. Let us help you avoid that $100,000 mistake. If we can help build that value in your company and expedite what you can do on your own in the next 8 years, if we can get that down to 18 months, you've got now 6 years of growth that you can do at a high level as opposed to getting there slowly and scraping your knee along the way. Right, so coaching is not a crutch. It is a way to supercharge your company, and so we will love to partner with you. If you're interested in it, contractorcuts.com, prostruck360.com. We'd love to hear from you. All right, thank you so much for listening, and we will talk to you guys next week.